All right, hello, fellow coder. Welcome to this next one. As promised, we are diving into the idea of figuring out the sort of the business rules around this, right? And again, in the real world, you'd be talking to a business analyst or some product lead person who understands how all this stuff should work. And in this case, I am sort of that person. So again, I'm filling two roles here. I'm both the coder and the sort of product expert, so to speak. Let's use the word expert loosely. So we need to figure out what to do if a lead has already come in. And again, we're using a polling system here. So the polling systems are inherently they're inherently flawed. It's not an efficient way to handle data, and it can be a little bit prone to error, as I'm sure we're going to find out as we go through this together. So the far better approach is it's a design pattern called publisher and subscriber, right? So I would love it if it was a publisher subscriber model. This is where the people on the other end, the people with the data, would use something called a webhook on our end, and they would notify our webhook whenever new data comes in, right? There's a trigger and an action. That's what APIs typically are all about, as well as other things like the web in general. Triggers, there's a triggering event and an action based on a triggering event. So with the webhook is the one that is notified, right? So the publisher, in this case, is them, right? The course report people would be the publisher. They will publish new data to my webhook endpoint, and my webhook endpoint would be the subscriber subscribing to the publisher's stream of data, so to speak. So when a new lead comes in, boom, they let our endpoint know the new lead came in. It triggers. Our code can go in and just deal with the fact that there's a new lead. It could send a message to Slack and be done, right? However, that's not the world that we're living in right now. We're living in a polling situation. With polling, you don't know if the data that you're looking at is new or old or what, and you have to figure it all out yourself, right? So the way the API works is it essentially takes in a few parameters, and this is something we'll have to add into our mock API. But for now, there's a few. We'll just deal with this. There's like a start date and an end date in terms of when you want to poll for the data, right? For when you'd like to poll the data. So, if let's say, we're 2024-01-01 is a start date, and then the end date is 2024-01-02. So there's a 1 day range here, and you're saying, give me all the leads between this date and that date, right? And while it is, January 2nd, 2024, I want to see all the leads between, yesterday and today. So today's the 2nd, then yesterday was the 1st. So give me all the leads. But if that's happening every 5 seconds or every 60 seconds or every 5 minutes or whatever it is you want to do, you're going to get the same leads over and over and over. So you're going to get the same leads coming in, every 5 seconds, every 60 seconds, until there actually is a new lead that magically came in the last 60 seconds, right? So we need to decide how to handle that situation. So you can see how it's inherently flawed, right? So, we need to decide how we're going to deal with this. Well, the easiest way to deal with this is kind of like how we have it laid out now, which is, hey, if the lead doesn't exist, persist it and post a message to Slack, right? Because the posting a message to Slack is important for my team, so my team knows to do something, right? There's an event that has happened. Now they need to take action, which is they need to pick up the phone and call these people and say, hey, we're from Coders Campus. I see that you've shown interest in the program. Let's have a chat and see if you would be a good fit or not, right? So I have that initial conversation with the student. So cool. And then if the lead already exists, then essentially we can essentially do nothing, right? We can essentially say, okay, we should have already posted a message to Slack informing the team that this person has been notified. So as I'm saying that out loud, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe we can have a data, like a flag in the database that says that this person, we've notified the team for this person, but I don't know. I think, that's if we try to post to Slack and it fails, I think that might be important, because we might need to know if we were not successfully able to either parse a lead, or if we were not successfully able to post a message to Slack, which maybe that can happen, right? Then we should track that. So let's file that in the back of our minds for a possible future enhancement. But for now, I think what we can say is, hey, if the lead already exists, and it exists within, what did I say? And the created date is within the range of the querying date, then ignore it. Well, if it's within the range of the querying date, it's kind of always going to be within the range of the querying date, now that I think about it, because it's not going to show up, if it's not inside of that range. Yeah, the only thing I can think of is if the match comes in and there's a discrepancy between the created date that we have in the database and the created date that we have in the API data. That's the only situation I can think of where there's something different. So let's run with that, right? Let's run with that. So let me delete this. So basically what I said was, we have queried the database. So a match is the one from the database, right? And maybe let's rename this, refactor, rename, because this is DB match, right? So DB match means it's from the database, so that I can sort of have an idea of the difference. We'll call this DB match. Cool. So now I know there's a difference between DB match and then just regular old match. Match could be from the API. And we can even call this API match, right? If you want to be, might as well be a little bit picky. Rename all occurrences. We'll call this API match. There. So now we can easily discern the difference between an API match and a DB match. So basically we want to say, hey, for the DB match, let's get the created at date, and let's compare it to, or let's check to see if it equals the API match date, created at date, right? So if they're equal to each other, then we can essentially do nothing. Rather, the inverse, if they do not match each other, then maybe we can have a system out for now that says, we should send a message to Slack for match, and then we can say, DB match or something like that. So that'll be a placeholder. So there, let's try that out and let's run that code. And basically what we should see is that we never see this new message that we put in. We should, in my opinion, we shouldn't see it, but hey, we'll see what reality gives us. Okay, so what we see is some select statements and then nothing, right? We're polling, selects, nothing. Beautiful. So that's what I expected. Now, sorry, I know the clearing of the throat is loud. I have such limited time to record these kinds of videos, and plus I need to get this code out and live on the internet. And yeah, so I'm recording even though I'm sick. I apologize. So I'm going to change this. You see, I don't know if you noticed, I changed the date for one of the records. So there's not going to be a match anymore for one of the records. So for one of the records, we should see, oh, and I just thought of an error in my code, but we'll see it here. So we should see that one of them, hey, we should send a message for this match, right? Because the created date changed. But look, it says we should send a message again. And it's going to keep on saying we should send a message because there's a discrepancy in the dates. And that would be bad. We don't want to keep posting to Slack every 5 seconds saying, there's a new lead, there's a new lead, there's a new lead. That would not make my staff happy. So I need to, I guess, update the DB match, right? So we need to say DB match dot set created at equal to the API match dot created at, right? We need to set it equal to that, and then we need to perform an update. So we need to do the match repository, which is, we want to save this information. So just like we did before, we're going to save that same DB match, okay? So just like we did here, we had a save where we save the match, and that inserted a new row into the database. We're going to do the same thing here. However, this is going to do an update because the DB match here is a row that came from the database, and since it came from the database, it has a primary an ID associated with it. A primary key is already associated with it. So Hibernate, which is sort of what's happening in the back end, in the this is an abstraction. What's the word? Let's call it the magic behind the scenes code that's running that other people have written for us that we're able to leverage, is going to realize, oh, there's an ID populated already. Therefore, this is not an insert statement. This is going to be an update statement. So we're going to update the created at date. So let's run this again. So we should only see that message once. The we should send a message to Slack. We should only see this once. On the first poll, which we do see, and then we see there's an update. We see the message, we see an update, and then there's no more message and no more update. Nice. Okay, I think I like that solution. Yeah. I am happy with that. So now we're in a position where we've mostly got the business logic in place. Now the next step is we need to start adding hooks into Slack and being able to actually send a message to Slack. Now I already have code for this, and I've written this code in another app that I built, and I'm just going to leverage my existing code and my existing Slack integration. But I don't know if I can. I'm trying to think if I can demonstrate this to you, because there's a bunch of API keys and there's a bunch of sensitive data here that I wouldn't want to publicize in a series like this, because then you guys would be able to go use the API key and post to my Slack channel by just doing like a Postman thing or whatever, or your own code, and you can start spamming messages into my Slack even though you don't belong to my Slack. So yeah, I'm gonna have to think this through. So in the next one, I will have already thought through how we're going to tackle the Slack situation. I think at the bare minimum, I can walk you through some of the steps of how that can be done, because it really wasn't all that difficult. So I'll walk you through that, I guess, in the next one. So looking forward to seeing you there. If anything goes wrong, we'll see. But I was gonna say, if anything changes between now and then, maybe the next video won't be about Slack, but we'll see if we can get some Slack stuff in there. See you next time.